You can't see it. It's 84 degrees here and I can't have my fan on because it interrupts with the mic. So welcome my shoulders to the show. Hello, Graham.
Well, hello, my dear. I love that background. It's cool.
I wish that I was actually in water right now.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt. This is Graham Kerr. And here we are again. So last week, I brought up the idea of one of the ways in which we can jump back into the water from our eddy is using a creative hobby and using difficult things to think about as a focus for that creative hobby. And instead of just thinking at a wall, we're creating and thinking at the same time as sort of a win-win process towards jumping back into the river. So that's what we've been thinking about this week, and that's what we're going to talk about. And then later on, Graham will bring up the next topic for next week.
Smashing. Well, I do love it when you throw a pondering idea out, because these are usually things that I'm not thinking about. And you cause me to begin to think, and I have a whole week to think. And the thing that I thought was very interesting, and the reason why I've changed my little picture up here, this is a picture that was done by an artist for me for the front cover of a book, which I never used this as a front cover book, but it was Trina and I hanging out in a backwater, the sort of backwater that we were talking about last time. And I thought about it, the only reason fish go into a backwater is because they've just used up an incredible amount of energy fighting their way upstream that far. And they pull aside to be able to become refreshed. So now when you came up last week with this idea, so here we are, we were talking about how to hang out and that kind of peacefulness that one can receive. But that doesn't make the world go away, because the moment you stop that time of peacefulness, you then have to get back into the water again. And the water at the present moment, you and I are talking, is just like it is behind you. It's frothy and it's got droplets going everywhere, and it's very distracting. I don't call it peaceful exactly. So you then had this brilliant idea. I'm not going to give you too much credit all at once, but it really was, I think, really brilliant. How do we get back into that river creatively? How can we use things that we are good at doing somehow, or feel gifted at doing, or even exploring to see whether we are? Can we do that rather than say the racist issues which still continue to boil in our culture? How do we re-enter that boiling culture of racism using a gift that we have to be able to enter into that and bring a measure of the peace we got through setting ourselves aside and bring that peace with us? Have I got that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
At last. Take us 8 weeks. All right, my darling, tell me how you understand how to do that, because I need to hear from you.
Yeah, for me, I sat down with pencil and paper, and for a little over an hour or so, I tried to do it more than once. And I'll try and explain this in Graham terms. Let me bring all the visuals I can into this for you. So I didn't want to create something in order for it to be like an artwork that I share. I just did it for the process. But I'll explain my process in that. I started with kind of going back to one of the things we've talked about in the past of life is a mountain. And so I drew a mountain on half of the paper, and then I folded it in half and kind of copied the mountain on the other side. So there's two halves of the paper with the mountain coming up to the middle. And then I drew like a little sun in the middle and the sun shining down on the mountain. And then I was trying to think of similar lives of two people both going through the journey of climbing the mountain, but on one side, someone has built like a staircase and a pool, and there's like palm trees, and it's nice, and there are times where it's really easy, but you're still climbing a mountain. Like, not everything is easy. It's still a journey. But on the other side, there's like boulders falling down, and there's a big cloud, and it's raining, and there's like pits with spikes in them, and like ice and slime and stuff like that. Like, these are two people both going through the difficult journey of climbing a mountain, but because of prejudice in the past, having built systems that are unfair, one person has to jump over a pit of spikes and be in the rain and do like dodge the boulders, and the other person is walking up a staircase that has been laid out for them, and sipping a margarita in the pool, and like going up. Like, there are just privileges that I know that I have from systems that have been built unfairly in the past, and I was trying to like think about the ways that I have been privileged specifically through that. Yeah, then that was kind of the first part of that experience.
Where is the sun in this? Where is the sun suspended? And
I put it right in the middle, at the
right
top
in the
of the
middle.
mountain.
Okay. So there is a, if you will, overriding sense of creativity for both sides. There's a creative place that all of this light comes from. And there's light that becomes in shadow, and light which is absorbed and produces life. That's a wonderful idea. I love that idea. You see, if you had positioned the sun over the privileged side, then what we would be asking is for the sun to move so that it actually arcs over, and at some particular time it is dead center, and its rays for life potential exist on both sides. Yeah, that's brilliant, because you see what that says to me then is God, if you will, is just as interested in the life that he gives and the love that he has for both sides. It's just that one side has to perceive it it has to endure it, whilst the other side has to enjoy it. So there's an endurance and enjoyment thing going on. And if the enjoyment, if we can share, who are privileged, the enjoyment of this with these who are having to endure it, then there's a greater balance coming. I don't know where that comes from, but my dear, you've got my mind spinning, and isn't that what you want?
Yeah, I'm glad that, I think you've interpreted it a different way than I was thinking, but I think for me it was more, there are more obstacles for some people than others, and and I was thinking of like, what are ways where I can help remove those obstacles. But I mean, that's one of the purposes of art and creativity, is that people can each interpret it their own way.
I think that's special. I got a very quick story, and I've got to be quick because I'm beginning to learn about too many words. And you were the first person in my life, in my career of being on a camera, that I've ever had to share space with. And so I do apologize for going on too long in the past. So get to the point, Graham, quickly. Okay, so Trina and I got into a motorhome, and we did a 42,000-mile loop around the United States when we were 62 years of age. And everywhere we went to a motorhome park, we talked. So we spoke to the people. We had a gathering, and we spoke. And it was a marvelous experience, 2 years on the road. And so at one stage there was a big meeting of all RVs, hundreds and hundreds of RVs. And I gave a workshop on food, you know what else. And Trina did it on writing poetry. And she put it in the brochure: you must not have ever written a poem, please, if you've ever tried to write a poem, don't come. I just want to be with people who've never done that, but are wondering what it would be like if they did. So she gave this 2-part series. And first part, she described the way she said about it, just like the way you've described your art. She explained that she sat down with a pencil and she wanted to say something to me, but she really couldn't find the right words. And I was always too quick with an argument and cut her off before she'd finished. But she wanted to be able to say something on a piece of paper to me. And she said, you could, when you're driving your RV, be sitting in the passenger seat or driving and preoccupied to a degree. And you would love to be able to talk about something, but it's not the right moment. So why not write the poem? And then when there is the right moment, you can. Well, they went away that night and they wrote poems. I cannot tell you, my dear, the most wonderful day I think I've ever shared with my darling, watching her literally crying at the poems that these people came forward with. Just overnight, who had never written a poem before. So in a sense, when you brought this up, I've only ever written really one poem. And I wrote it for a man who is dying and who I love greatly. And I went back to that poem because it's the only way that I know to, at the present moment, to try and shorten down my words and coalesce them into something that means something about this situation. And so I wanted to be able to get into life, but I wanted to get it with that peace which I'd found. And so I rewrote the poem. And I have it here on the machine upon which I did it, which is my cell phone, which I think says something about being able to be creative. This one is called Hope, a poem for those who live with black and blue. The black being obviously the black matter and the blue being the police. So the sky is dark, ominous. The lake is one shade less. Faint shoreline sparkles, reflecting light above a single gap that clouds encase and fringe a tiny patch of blue. My hands surround warmth, both heart and breast make known the life within. I release, and the bird flies forth directly to the blue. I watch it go swiftly, surely, until no longer seen. The sky is dark, still threatening, but now hope remains amid the blue. A bird of prayer is there. So rather than spoil it, I mean, either that works to be able to say that we are praying for a situation like this. It is a turmoil. I see that water bubbling and boiling behind you at the present moment. But doesn't it say something about hope is there? That prayers are going up into this conflict zone, and there is hope because of that for both sides. So does that deal with it? No, but does it allow me to move on beyond the turmoil of the moment, up that river just a little further, because the white water doesn't go on forever. It's only in patches. And then it becomes that lovely tranquil scene with the beautiful trees on either side and the green, bluish color of the water. Oh, and the peace and the quiet of it. That's a life to enjoy, your side of that mountain with the enjoyment. We've just endured something, and now we're to that next phase. It's not, the white water is not going to go away, but we can find a place to creatively move forward through it. That's what you have introduced to me. So I'm going to do more of this poetry stuff.
I really like your I think you've made me think that more so with this, it's not only a way to process it right now, but is also like in creation of like a physical thing, be that a poem or like an artwork, it will last. So like a year from now, you can look back at this and remember the thoughts that you've had, and like either how you've grown or like how you need to remember those thoughts, or like either way, like I like it being a thing that we can also, a way to remember, outside of, you know, recording our thoughts to each other. Like that'll also be this the fact that we're recording this is something that we can look back on, this creative process years to come and see the thoughts that we've had here. So
do you know, there's that. And isn't there also the possibility of a journal? Do you keep a journal or a diary of any kind?
You know, my greatest weakness is my lack of ability to do a thing every day. So I have had many journals that all have like 3 pages filled out in them. I wish that I could. I admire the practice, and I think that there is value in like maintaining and keeping track of your thoughts. But usually mine end up like the other week. This is my current journal. This is literally just like one of these, I think, is from a hotel. Like this is just like a folded thing from a notebook. Just another folded piece of paper. Like once I've changed topics, I fold it instead of like getting a new piece of paper. This is my brain.
Have you ever kept a sketchbook? Because, being an artist, do you have a ring-binded sketchbook, and you can go back and see some of your past work?
I do, but it's the same way. There's like 3 pages filled out at the beginning of all of them. Even the one that I made my artwork on, I tore it out of the sketchbook. I should have just left it in there.
Are you having your appetite whetted, even as we're speaking, about doing something in a more formal way? Would you ponder that?
I can be re-inspired to try that again. I will say I'm downtrodden because of how many times I've tried to keep a journal and failed, but if we just give up, then what's the point? So might as well try again. And it's good to be inspired by others in that, and pull energy from those around you if you don't have the energy yourself.
Yes. Do you know, I never kept a journal until I was 51 years old. Years to go before you join him. But I'm so very glad that I did that now. I've got all of them, every journal that I've ever done, and every page is full. So anyway, I don't remember, that's my life, and you are running your life, and I'm just a few years, 60 years ahead of you. And there we go. That doesn't make me right and you not right, but with the fact that we are listening to each other over those years is really interesting. I am so interested in your future because I'm going to be gone and you're going to be in charge, because you're going to be here. And you keep on giving me hope for the future. So that's important. So I want to, it's my turn, right? So yeah. Here I want to stay in the river because it's such a good idea. And I got to think to myself, now, when I get to the river, am I going to turn into the river and go with the flow? I've never done that in my whole life. I wouldn't even know how to begin to do that. I think I did when I was a kid, but since then I haven't. So I'm going upstream. Now, a salmon, according to my research, sniffs its way upstream. I don't see a particular nose in front of the salmon, except it does have a sharp front. So when a salmon has been around the whole Pacific basin maybe twice, let's say a Chinook, a king salmon, and it turns in because it sniffs, it smells something familiar to it. This is something that feels like home. It's its natal river, the river that it was born in. And there's about 10% that go up different rivers, and that's important for other reasons. But most fish do go back to their river. So I don't know how to describe my river, except there was a time in my life when, instead of being very self-aware and self-interested, you know, when you're a television personality around the world, you too tend to get rather self-focused. And I was very self-focused. And then suddenly you get this epiphany, this moment of turning around, which you and I have discussed. And from that moment in time, I became more interested in other people than myself. And it was just like, I just walked round the side of the mountain and saw people, you know, who didn't have umbrellas and palm trees. And for me, it broke my heart when I saw that. I actually wept over that. And I was only, I don't think I'd even made a conscious decision for change when the tears began to fall. I think they fell first. And so what I've done in my life is I've seen those tears as being like a spring for a river. And I sniff out in the river the aroma of those tears, of that original understanding of another human being's need. I've gone beyond my own immediate self-interest. And so as I come downstream more and more and more, and see the broadening river, and see the polluting streams that come in from either side, etc., see the whole thing becoming a giant cash flow, which does more harm than it does good, it just makes me want to dive into that river and sniff my way upstream. What I'm sniffing for is not the pollutants, it's not all the waterfalls and the white water and everything else which is getting in my way. I'm going after what made me cry in the first place. And therefore, I will go through each waterfall and each white water difficulty that presents itself, the racism of the moment and the ugliness of the way in which we exploit one another. And I don't get lost in that. I don't become an activist for this, bearing my banners and everything else. I want to dive through that, as you have helped me today, creatively. I don't want to do any more damage. I don't want to do any more harm. I do want things to get better. And that's what drives me. I believe with all my heart it can get better. That's why this word that you and I are sharing together is resilience. That's what I'm looking. If the spring has a name, it's called resilience. If nature can keep on bursting forth like it does with such harmony and interlockedness and everything else, why can't we? That's my statement. So I love this process of doing this with you, and I long for us to find creative ways through the barriers of the time in which we live. It's really exciting. Yeah. Thank you. So here's my thought. How do you describe your river? And I will try and describe it other than tears. I want to look in, what is the river and what's our direction? Is it upstream, or is it going with the flow to be able to share with people as you're going down, like you've done with your kayaking? You know, you go down as a group of people and you talk with each other and you have fellowship, and that's fair enough. And the life goes on, water spills out. What kind of river are we actually on? I've told you a little bit about what I think, but I'd love to take the weekend. I'd love to try and write a poem about it too.
Yeah, sure. I like your I like that you have such a momentous like change in your life that has this little kernel like of like discovering empathy and like a quest for resilience that especially along with the metaphor of a river and yeah, I don't have as pretty of words to describe my thoughts as you sometimes, and it makes me nervous. But I really appreciate the metaphor of the salmon and along with the metaphor of like nature does work so much in a cycle, and each individual piece of that cycle is necessary for that, for nature to succeed and grow. And like salmon is such an important part of that because they bring nutrients in from the ocean, and then when they die they leave that for the trees, and the trees soak it up, and then the trees eat our carbon and shoot out oxygen and all that kind of, like there's a full cycle in that. And I love connecting that to like searching for that in humanity. Like each individual person is so important for this life that we live.
Oh, I once saw some research on the salmon dying, when they give birth, and the carcass being carried in by the waterside, and of the nutrients going exactly as you said into the trees, and in the leaves of the trees you can find these marine elements, and I think of that verse which goes, "The trees of the field shall clap their hands," and you see, I'm looking out at my little garden at the moment, and there's a bit of a breeze, and there are thousands of leaves, and they're all clapping at the present moment. Mm-hmm. Oh dear, I know. Yes. I should be locked up, I understand.
No, I love it. Like the world needs more colorful metaphors. It's what makes life interesting. But
help us to know how to ponder for the week. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have one more point. Just I like that we have talked about so much of like our efforts towards wanting to preserve nature and how important that is, and as like other important issues have come up in the world around us and we've begun to discuss those, I love this idea of taking that that same passion about like preserving that cycle of nature and putting it also towards like preserving the cycle of humanity. And I know those are interlinked in like we are human beings, we are part of that cycle. But yeah, I like that, and just being able to tie back all of this energy that I already have towards a project that I'm really passionate about, like the preserving the resilience of nature and all that stuff. Yes. And being able to move that towards preserving the resilience of humanity and equality and beauty and all that. Okay, so anyway, this week we will be pondering what the river looks like for us in my glasses are fogging up because it's so hot in here. Okay. It got me really distracted. Okay, so this week we will be thinking about what the river looks like for us, what direction we want to go in it, and different ways that we can apply that to everything we've been thinking about lately, and continuing to include creativity and pondering and climbing mountains and all the things that we've been talking about over the last 8 weeks in the river. So
marvelous.
Yeah, we've got a lot of thinking to do to clarify that whole thought. If we don't have collaboration from people around us, then what do we I'm gonna start over. I lost my train of thought again. It's so hot. I'm melting. Please do remember to leave a comment down below so we can keep that in mind in our conversations. We love sharing that with you. And if you subscribe, you'll see our videos a little bit more often, and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you saw. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bless you.